Hello, I am Liam. I'm 24 years old and at this moment sitting on an isolated beach with my boss, the highly respected and intimidating Victoria Blake. I have to admit, my life has taken a very unexpected turn. If someone had asked me a few weeks ago where I'd be today, I might have joked, fetching coffee or confirming reservations. Certainly not stranded on a remote island in the middle of nowhere. My job is officially titled personal assistant, which is just a fancy way of saying that I handle everything Victoria doesn't have time or patience to deal with: coffee, runs, scheduling meetings, taking notes, even picking up her dry cleaning. It's mundane, but it pays the bills. Victoria is the CEO of Blake Industries, an influential financial services company in New York. She's 40, elegant, sophisticated, and has a reputation for being as cold and unapproachable as a glacier. From the moment I started working for her, Victoria always maintained clear professional boundaries. Our interactions typically consisted of curt nods, brisk exchanges, and the occasional disapproving glance. We rarely spoke outside of work tasks, and even then her communication was precise and distant. To say there was a gap between us would be an understatement. There was an entire canyon of differences separating our lives and personalities. Earlier today, we'd boarded her sleek private jet bound for Miami, where an important client meeting was scheduled. It was my first time on a private plane, and despite feeling slightly out of place amidst the polished leather seats and pristine decor, I tried to appear casual. Victoria had settled quickly, typing away on her tablet, lost in her own meticulously organized world. I chose a seat across the aisle, glancing nervously out of the window as heavy clouds gathered on the horizon. About halfway into the flight, the sky turned a deep, ominous shade of gray, and the plane started trembling slightly. At first, I tried to ignore it, convinced the turbulence was just temporary. But minutes passed and the shaking intensified. Anxiety pulled at my chest. I glanced toward Victoria, half expecting to see her as nervous as I felt. But she remained entirely composed, though I noticed her hand gripping her tablet slightly tighter than before. The intercom crackled to life suddenly, the pilot's voice steady but strained. "We're hitting some unexpected weather. Please fasten your seatbelts and remain seated." The plane jolted violently just as he finished speaking, nearly throwing me out of my seat. My heart pounded rapidly, panic quickly taking over my rational mind. "What's happening?" I said loudly, gripping the armrest until my knuckles whitened. Victoria finally looked up, meeting my eyes briefly. Her expression was unreadable, but I noticed her jaw clenched tightly, betraying the fear hidden beneath her carefully maintained composure. "It's just turbulence," she said calmly, though her voice lacked her usual confidence. Another violent jolt shook the aircraft, this time accompanied by a deafening crack of thunder. The cabin lights flickered momentarily, plunging us briefly into darkness before coming back on. I stared wide-eyed at Victoria, searching for any hint of reassurance, but she remained silent, eyes fixated on the cockpit door. Without warning, the plane began descending sharply, the horrifying sensation of free fall gripping my stomach. Oxygen masks dropped from above, swaying chaotically. My instincts took over. I snatched a mask and pressed it over my face, my breathing ragged and desperate. Victoria froze momentarily, eyes wide in shock. Without thinking, I reached out, grabbing another mask and practically shoving it into her hand. "Put it on!" I shouted urgently. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second before following my instructions, her hands trembling slightly. We locked eyes again, and in that moment, the barriers between boss and assistant faded away. We were just two frightened people facing the unknown. The intercom crackled again, barely audible over the roar of the storm. "We're going down," the pilot's voice echoed grimly, sending a chill down my spine. Victoria reached out instinctively, gripping my forearm with surprising strength, her nails digging into my skin. "Hold on," she whispered urgently, fear finally surfacing openly in her eyes. The impact came suddenly, violently. Metal groaned and tore apart around us as the plane crashed into solid ground. Everything seemed to happen simultaneously: the screech of metal, the explosion of glass, the overwhelming sensation of being thrown forward. Darkness engulfed my senses as I lost consciousness briefly. When I awoke, disoriented and dizzy, I found myself still buckled into the seat, the plane's cabin mangled and open to the elements. Victoria was stirring beside me, groaning softly, clearly dazed. Painfully, I unbuckled myself, stumbling to my feet and reaching out to steady her. "Victoria," My voice shook as I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She winced slightly, opening her eyes and looking around in confusion. Are we alive? Her voice was quiet, almost childlike. Somehow, yes, I said, glancing around to assess our surroundings. We had landed on a stretch of sandy beach palm trees, lining the horizon, lush vegetation, indicating that we had crashed onto a tropical island, beautiful yet entirely isolated. The reality of our situation struck me hard. We need help, I whispered, pulling out my phone only to find no signal. Victoria checked hers, her face going pale when she realized the same thing. No reception, she murmured, her calm demeanor cracking ever so slightly. We stepped outside the wreckage cautiously, the hot sun and humid air enveloping us immediately. The silence was unsettling, punctuated only by the soft crash of waves on the nearby shore. No signs of civilization were visible anywhere, only endless oceans stretching infinitely in every direction. Victoria stood beside me, rigid, struggling to maintain her usual composed exterior. We're completely isolated, she finally admitted, her voice betraying a hint of panic. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to remain calm despite the growing sense of dread inside me. Yeah, I said slowly, carefully choosing my words. No rescue, no communication. Victoria turned to me, the realization dawning in her expression that for perhaps the first time in her adult life, she had no control. Her eyes searched mine desperately, looking for reassurance, answers I didn't possess. I knew what she was thinking, what we were both thinking. I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze steadily. We're going to have to depend on each other to survive this. She hesitated briefly, clearly uncomfortable with the notion of vulnerability, of reliance on someone like me, her younger, inexperienced assistant. Yet there was no alternative. After a moment, she nodded slowly, reluctantly acknowledging our shared reality. You're right, she said quietly, her voice barely audible above the waves. We're in this together. As we stood side by side, staring out into the endless expanse of ocean, I felt an uneasy certainty settle deep within me. Our survival now more than ever would depend entirely on one another. The brutal reality of our situation hit us the following morning. When we woke at sunrise beside the wrecked plane, an uneasy quietness hung over the crash site. The day before, we had made the grim discovery that the pilots hadn't survived the impact, their bodies now respectfully covered near the fuselage. Now Victoria and I were alone, completely alone, in a place untouched by civilization, without a single way to call for help. After a tense, almost wordless breakfast of a few emergency protein bars found scattered near the wreckage, I broke the silence, attempting to sound confident. We need to find fresh water. That's priority number one. Victoria didn't look at me immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the horizon, jaw clenched, her composure rapidly returning. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm and decisive. We should stay close to the beach. There might be fresh water running into the ocean nearby, and we can signal passing ships from the shore. I don't think anyone will be passing anytime soon, I countered, trying to keep the frustration from creeping into my voice. It's more practical to move inland. Streams or freshwater pools are usually found away from the shoreline. She shot me a skeptical glance, her brows knitted slightly, clearly annoyed. And you know this from experience. Have you been stranded before? I swallowed back a biting response. Look, Victoria, I've done a bit of wilderness camping in my life. Trust me, fresh water tends to run downhill from inland. She straightened her posture, a familiar, defiant look crossing her face. I'm aware you're trying to help Liam, but I'm used to making critical decisions every single day. Let's stay on the coast until we're certain we have no alternatives. I exhaled sharply, fighting the irritation rising within me. If we stay here and there's no fresh water, we'll lose valuable time. Dehydration can set in quickly. Victoria shook her head dismissively, her patience clearly wearing thin. I'm confident we can find what we need near the shoreline. We'll do it my way. Her superior tone stung deeply, but I chose my words carefully. You're my boss back home, Victoria, but we're not in the office now. Survival isn't about seniority. It's about common sense. She narrowed her eyes, her voice now icy, Isheng. Fine, if you believe you know better, feel free to waste your time. I'll stick to my plan. Frustrated, I turned abruptly, deciding further argument was pointless. Fine, I muttered. Good luck. We separated without another word, each determined to prove the other wrong. Victoria walked purposefully along the shoreline, searching among rocks and coastal plants, while I headed into the dense foliage determined to find proof of my argument. The jungle was thick, oppressive with humidity, and filled with unfamiliar sounds. My anger gradually subsided, replaced by a quiet anxiety. I began to doubt myself. What if Victoria was right? What if I found nothing? An hour passed without success. My throat grew dry and frustration returned full force. Just as doubt began creeping further into my mind, I caught sight of some low-lying bushes bearing bright red berries. Cautiously, I picked one, hesitating. My limited survival knowledge told me not all berries were safe, but the vibrant colors offered hope that food might be abundant here. Suddenly, a distant shout caught my attention. Victoria's voice strained and fearful. My heart raced with sudden concern. Without hesitation, I sprinted back toward the shore, ignoring branches whipping at my face. I burst onto the beach, scanning quickly for any sign of her. Her voice came again from further along the shoreline near a cluster of tall fruit trees. I ran toward the sound, breathless. When I reached her, Victoria was sitting awkwardly on the sand, wincing in obvious pain, blood visible on her ankle. Above her, dangling fruit swayed gently in the breeze just out of reach. "What happened?" I asked quickly, kneeling beside her. Her eyes avoided mine stubbornly, embarrassment evident. "I was climbing to reach those fruits, and my foot slipped," she admitted reluctantly, her voice uncharacteristically small. "Let me see," I said, gently examining the injury. Her ankle was scraped badly but didn't appear broken. "You're lucky it wasn't worse." She tensed at my touch, clearly uncomfortable with vulnerability. "I didn't need you to rush over," she said, her tone attempting defiance but coming out subdued instead. Ignoring her protest, I tore a piece from the sleeve of my shirt and wrapped it carefully around her ankle, tightening just enough to stop the bleeding. "You didn't have to climb," I told her quietly, trying to keep my voice neutral. "We can figure things out together." Climbing trees alone wasn't smart. Victoria glanced away, her jaw tightening. "I can handle myself." "I know you can," I responded evenly, attempting reassurance rather than criticism. "But we're stuck here, Victoria. We need to rely on each other, not compete." She didn't answer immediately, her eyes fixated stubbornly on the distant waves. Silence hung heavily between us. Finally, she took a deep breath, seemingly collecting herself. "Did you find anything inland?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," I admitted honestly, "but there are berry bushes that might be edible. I'll double-check to be sure and we'll keep searching." Victoria nodded slowly, appearing thoughtful. Her stubborn facade began cracking slightly, giving way to quiet uncertainty. "I thought this would be easier," she said quietly, as if speaking more to herself than to me. "Survival isn't easy," I replied gently, "but it's possible if we work together." She finally looked at me, her usual hard expression softened slightly. For the first time since we crashed, I saw genuine doubt and vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, hesitation evident in her voice, though she quickly masked her discomfort. "I shouldn't have dismissed your ideas." Surprised by her unexpected apology, I felt my own anger melting away. "It's fine, we're both scared. Let's just move forward from here." She nodded silently, standing up carefully and wincing as she tested her ankle. Instinctively, I moved to steady her, but she raised a hand slightly, indicating she could manage on her own. Still, I noticed she leaned slightly closer as we began walking back toward the makeshift shelter. As evening descended upon the island, we shared a quiet meal, contemplating the difficult days ahead. Victoria sat across from me, thoughtful yet calmer, the cold barrier she erected earlier slowly weakening. Despite her silence, her gaze occasionally drifted toward me with subtle, unspoken gratitude. In the flickering firelight, I realized how much had changed in just one day. Our pride had nearly cost us dearly, but maybe this harsh lesson had taught us both humility. As darkness settled around us, Victoria finally spoke, her voice steady but softer than usual. "Tomorrow we'll look for water together. You lead." Her admission surprised me, but I welcomed it warmly. Together, I agreed, knowing we'd both learned something valuable that day. Survival wasn't about proving who was right. It was about trusting the person beside you, no matter their differences. The days following our argument seemed to transform our situation dramatically. Victoria, though still maintaining her natural air of authority, began to defer to me more openly when it came to our survival plans. We quickly found a steady rhythm in dividing responsibilities. I was in charge of constructing shelter, a task that tapped into my long-dormant memories of camping with my father. Victoria managed our limited food and water supplies meticulously, applying her strategic thinking to rationing our provisions and determining the best ways to stretch our resources. Under the relentless heat of the tropical sun, I spent the next few days gathering branches, palm fronds and vines to construct a stable shelter. It was grueling, sweat-soaked labor, but oddly satisfying. I selected a flat patch of ground slightly inland, protected by thick bushes and shaded by towering palms. Slowly, a small but sturdy hut began to take shape, blending into the dense green foliage around us. Victoria, meanwhile, became almost scientific in her approach to our food supply. She meticulously stored edible fruits, carefully separating the questionable ones, and strictly rationed our water intake. Each evening, she'd sit quietly near the hut, updating me about our resources in a calm and analytical manner, never allowing emotion to creep into her voice. However, beneath her composed demeanor, I sensed an underlying tension, a weight of worry she refused to share. One evening as dusk fell, casting the island in a golden hue, I finished adding palm fronds to reinforce the roof. I stepped back proudly, observing the completed structure. "It's not exactly luxury accommodations, but it'll keep us dry," I remarked, wiping sweat from my forehead. Victoria looked up from the fruit she was organizing and nodded with genuine appreciation. "It's impressive. You're good at this," she admitted softly. "Thanks," I replied, slightly caught off guard by her sincerity. "My dad used to take me camping every summer. Guess some of it stuck." She was silent for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. Eventually, she stood and came to sit beside me on a fallen log near the shelter. For a while, we both gazed quietly at the fading sunlight dancing on the ocean's surface. "My father never did anything like that with me," Victoria said, suddenly breaking our silence. Her voice was quiet, almost reflective. "He was always working. Ambition runs deep in our family." I looked at her, surprised by the unexpected revelation. Until now, she'd barely spoken a word about her personal life. "Ambition isn't necessarily a bad thing," I said cautiously. She gave a small, bitter laugh. "No, but it can leave a person very lonely." I hesitated, unsure whether she expected a response. "You seem to have everything," I finally said, choosing my words carefully, at least from an outsider's perspective. Victoria sighed softly, her gaze still fixed on the ocean. "Appearances can be deceiving, Liam. Success often costs more than people realize." She paused briefly, as though debating whether to continue. When she spoke again, her tone was more vulnerable, softer than I'd ever heard it. "I was married once. We met early in our careers, both ambitious, driven people. It seemed perfect at first, two people climbing the ladder together. But as success grew, so did the distance between us. Eventually, our relationship became little more than a business arrangement, two strangers sharing the same roof." Her voice cracked slightly, revealing hidden pain. "In the end, he left, and I buried myself in work." "I'm sorry," I said softly, genuinely touched by her honesty. She shook her head gently, brushing off my sympathy. "It's why I've become this," she gestured to herself dismissively, "cold and distant, as people say. It's easier to build walls than to risk getting hurt again." I didn't respond immediately, absorbing her words. Her confession explained so much about her behavior, her rigid professionalism, her guarded nature. "Sometimes walls protect us," I finally said gently, "but they also keep everyone else out." Victoria turned to look at me, her expression unreadable for a long moment. "Perhaps," she murmured quietly, almost to herself before standing abruptly. "We should rest. We both had a long day." Nightfall came swiftly, bringing a sudden chill to the humid air. We retreated to our modest hut, settling silently on opposite sides, separated by the quiet tension of the truth she'd shared. We hadn't been asleep long before a distant rumble woke me. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the noise intensified rapidly, growing closer. Rain began to pound violently against our shelter wind, howling furiously through the trees. "Victoria!" I shouted over the deafening roar of the storm, scrambling to my feet. She sat up quickly, alarm flashing across her face. "What's happening?" "Tropical storm," I answered, panic rising quickly as the fragile hut trembled under violent gusts. "Stay close to me." The wind screamed louder, shaking the structure viciously. Palm fronds began tearing away, leaving gaps that allowed rain to lash through. Victoria moved instinctively closer, eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, I reached out, pulling her firmly into my arms, shielding her from the elements. "I've got you!" I shouted above the chaos, holding her tight as the shelter threatened to collapse. Her fingers gripped my shirt tightly, face buried against my shoulder, her breathing rapid and ragged. For a moment amidst the storm's fury, nothing else mattered except protecting her. We huddled together for what felt like an eternity, listening helplessly as the storm ravaged our surroundings. Eventually, the fury slowly subsided, the howling winds fading into gentle whispers and the torrential rain easing to a quiet drizzle. When it finally ended, dawn was breaking. We cautiously stepped outside, assessing the damage. The island was strewn with fallen branches and debris, our hut severely damaged, but still standing just barely. Victoria stood beside me silently, visibly shaken, yet strangely calm. When she finally looked up at me, her expression held a depth I'd never seen: gratitude, vulnerability, and quiet awe all blended together. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice trembling slightly. "You protected me." I smiled gently, warmth filling my chest despite our bleak circumstances. "We're in this together, remember?" She nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on mine. "It's been a very long time since I felt truly safe with anyone, Liam." Her admission touched me deeply, realizing the profound trust she'd placed in me during the storm. "I'm glad you do now," I replied quietly, sincerity clear in my voice. Victoria turned toward the ocean once more, breathing deeply, her posture finally relaxing. Something subtle yet significant had shifted between us, deeper than simple partnership, an unspoken bond formed by shared vulnerability and mutual trust. Standing side by side amid the wreckage of the storm, I sensed Victoria's wall of isolation beginning to crumble, replaced by cautious openness. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel safe, truly safe with someone else, and surprisingly, that someone was me. Days on the island slowly blurred together into a simple, almost rhythmic existence. Each morning brought sunlight filtering gently through the leafy canopy, accompanied by birdsong and the calming rush of waves. Gradually, the anxiety and tension we initially felt transformed into quiet acceptance, a mutual understanding of our circumstances. The boundaries between boss and assistant dissolved, leaving only Victoria and me, two people learning to survive together. Since the storm, something had unmistakably shifted between us. Victoria was noticeably softer, her voice gentler, and her eyes kinder whenever she spoke to me. She began to open up more, gradually revealing layers she'd kept hidden beneath her polished exterior. In return, I found myself sharing things I'd never told anyone: dreams, regrets, ambitions left unfulfilled. One afternoon, while gathering firewood, Victoria turned to me with curiosity in her eyes. "Liam, if you don't mind me asking, how did you end up as an assistant? You are clearly capable of more." I paused, setting down the branches I'd collected, feeling slightly vulnerable, yet comfortable enough to be honest. "I studied business and marketing at university." I began, slowly looking down at the ground. "But after graduation, things got complicated. My father fell ill, so I took the first job I could find just to support him. When he passed away, I guess I just felt stuck." Victoria's expression softened with compassion. I had no idea. I shrugged, trying to appear indifferent, though her kindness moved me deeply. "It's fine. Working for you was never meant to be permanent, just something to help me get on my feet. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to pursue my dreams." Her eyes searched mine carefully, genuine empathy reflected clearly in her gaze. "You deserve more than fetching coffee and arranging schedules, Liam. You're talented and resourceful. I hope when we get home, you'll chase those dreams again." Hearing those encouraging words from Victoria meant more than she knew. I smiled gratefully, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. "Thank you," I said softly, sincerity evident in my voice. In return, Victoria opened up further about herself, sharing more stories about her past, her struggles, and the isolation she'd felt as she climbed higher on the corporate ladder. Each conversation brought us closer, gradually forging a bond stronger than mere partnership or survival necessity. One bright afternoon, driven by hunger and the need for fresh food, we headed toward a rocky inlet on the opposite side of the island to try fishing. Using makeshift spears crafted from sharpened sticks, we stood knee-deep in crystal-clear water. watching carefully for movement beneath the surface. Victoria's eyes sparkled with excitement and determination as she waded forward, aiming carefully. With surprising agility, she plunged her spear downward, triumphantly pulling out a large silvery fish. "Liam, I got one!" she shouted excitedly, a huge smile lighting her face free of any of her usual restraint or professionalism. I laughed heartily, genuinely delighted by her joy. Inspired by her success, I quickly made my own attempt, soon catching another fish to add to our feast. That evening, we roasted our catch over the open fire, savoring every bite of fresh, hot fish as twilight deepened around us. Sitting side by side, we spoke easily, laughter ringing out freely, unrestricted by formalities or job titles. For the first time since the crash, neither of us thought about our responsibilities, society's expectations, or the pressures awaiting us back home. As the night deepened, the conversation gradually quieted, replaced by comfortable silence as we stared at the flickering flames. Victoria leaned closer, her voice gentle and reflective. "You know, Liam, being stuck here with you, it's changed something in me. It's made me realize how empty my life had become." I turned to her, surprised yet touched by her openness. Maybe this island isn't just a curse. Maybe it's giving us both a chance to reset, to see things more clearly. She nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful and sincere. "I think you're right." We sat quietly for a long time, enjoying the peacefulness of each other's presence before finally retreating to our repaired shelter for the night. It felt natural, easy, a closeness that had grown beyond mere survival companionship. But our newfound harmony abruptly shattered later that night. I awoke suddenly, sensing something wrong. Victoria lay restlessly on the other side of our hut, her breathing uneven, skin flushed and sweaty even in the cool night air. Alarmed, I moved closer, gently touching her forehead. It burned hot beneath my palm. "Victoria," I called softly, trying not to startle her. She opened her eyes, slowly, disoriented and weak. "I feel terrible," she murmured faintly. I examined her quickly, realizing the small injury from days earlier had become infected, now swollen and angry red. My heart raced with worry, knowing we had limited medical supplies and even less knowledge to treat infections properly. "You're running a high fever," I said urgently, forcing myself to remain calm. "We need to cool you down and keep you hydrated." Throughout that long, anxious night, I cared for her, carefully dampening strips of fabric to soothe her forehead, coaxing her to drink small amounts of water, murmuring gentle reassurances whenever she stirred restlessly. My exhaustion was overshadowed by deep concern, knowing how dangerous her condition could become if her fever didn't break soon. Finally, as dawn approached, her fever slowly subsided, her breathing steadier and deeper. Relieved but drained, I remained close, unwilling to leave her side until I was certain she'd be all right. The morning sun filtered through gaps in the shelter, gently warming the air around us. Victoria opened her eyes slowly, confusion briefly crossing her face before clarity returned. She looked down, noticing me slumped beside her, my head resting against the shelter wall, clearly exhausted from the night's vigil. Watching me quietly, her heart filled with a mix of emotions, gratitude, warmth, and newfound respect. For the first time since our professional relationship began, she truly saw me not as her younger assistant, but as a mature, capable, and trustworthy man who had selflessly cared for her through one of her most vulnerable moments. Gently, she reached out lightly, touching my arm to awaken me. I stirred slowly, blinking sleepily as our eyes met. She offered me a soft smile, gratitude shining openly in her gaze. "Thank you, Liam," she whispered, her voice filled with heartfelt sincerity. "I couldn't have made it through last night without you." I smiled gently in return, deeply relieved by her improved condition. "I'm just glad you're all right." In that quiet, tender moment, Victoria realized fully how much Liam had grown in her eyes. No longer simply a young assistant fetching coffee and running errands, but a strong, reliable partner who had proven himself capable of protecting and caring for her. As the days passed following Victoria's illness, her health gradually improved, bringing relief, but also something more complex into our lives. With each day, something subtly shifted between us. Neither Victoria nor I openly acknowledged it, yet it hung in the air, quietly growing stronger. A current of feelings we both felt yet hesitated to express. We fell into routines easily. Victoria continued to carefully monitor our resources meticulously, planning our days while I maintained the shelter, fetched fresh water, and hunted for food. Our partnership grew seamless, intuitive. We knew each other's habits, anticipated each other's thoughts, and began to share looks and brief touches that lingered slightly longer each time. One quiet afternoon, while exploring the area around the crash site again, I stumbled upon a significant discovery, a reflective metal panel from the aircraft still intact, despite the violent crash. My heart skipped a beat, recognizing immediately that this could become our ticket off the island, a perfect signaling device to attract passing aircraft or ships. I brought it back carefully, presenting my find to Victoria, who stood quietly near our shelter. As I explained my idea excitedly, detailing how we could place the reflective surface strategically to maximize visibility, I noticed Victoria remained silent, her eyes clouded with uncertainty. "Victoria," I asked gently, sensing her hesitation, "this could get us rescued. Isn't that good news?" She hesitated, clearly conflicted. "Of course it's good news," she finally replied softly, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. "It's just," she trailed off, turning slightly away from me, her expression thoughtful and distant. I moved closer, concerned by her reaction. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, clearly gathering courage. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, reflective. "I'm not sure I'm ready to leave Liam. It sounds strange, but this island, this life we've built here, is the most honest and happy I've felt in years." Her confession surprised me, yet simultaneously resonated deeply. "I understand," I said gently. "It's simple here. No pressures, no roles to maintain." She looked at me carefully, her eyes filled with vulnerability. "Exactly. Back home, I built an image, powerful, composed, successful. But behind all that, I was alone, surrounded by people, yet completely isolated." Her voice softened further, barely above a whisper. "I convinced myself loneliness was part of success, the price I had to pay. But being here with you, I've realized how wrong I was." My heart quickened, moved by her openness. "You're not alone anymore," I assured her quietly. Victoria took a step closer, her eyes locked firmly with mine. "No, not here. But what happens when we return back there? I'm still your boss. You're still my assistant. Our worlds don't easily align." I sighed gently, recognizing the painful truth of her words. "I've thought about that too. But maybe we've changed. Maybe being here showed us what's truly important." She looked away momentarily, clearly troubled by the uncertainty ahead. Finally, she spoke again, her voice hesitant yet firm. "I don't want to lose this connection we found, but I'm afraid going back means returning to who we were, separate, isolated again." I reached out instinctively, gently touching her arm, bringing her gaze back to mine. "We don't have to lose it, not if we choose not to." Victoria's eyes searched mine intently, searching for reassurance. "Honestly, what if it's not enough? What if the real world forces us apart again?" "I won't let it," I replied earnestly, my voice filled with conviction. "Being here taught me to fight for what's important. You're important, Victoria, more than I ever imagined possible." A small smile softened her expression, gratitude shining clearly in her eyes. "You've become very important to me too, Liam," she admitted quietly, her voice carrying a warmth I'd rarely heard from her. We stood silently for a moment, the profound admission hanging heavily between us. Finally, I moved closer, gently pulling her into a comforting embrace. She relaxed immediately, leaning into me, her head resting softly against my chest. "I never imagined feeling this way again," she whispered softly, vulnerability threading through each word. "After my divorce, I promised myself I'd never let anyone get close enough to hurt me." I held her tighter, determined to reassure her. "You don't have to protect yourself from me. I care deeply about you, Victoria, more than you probably realize." She lifted her head slowly, looking into my eyes with cautious hope. "I've known for a while now," she admitted softly. "I just didn't want to admit it even to myself." "Me neither," I confessed quietly, a small smile forming. "But being here, having nothing but each other, it's changed everything. You're not my boss anymore. Not in my heart. You're someone I can't imagine being without." Victoria's eyes glistened softly, clearly moved by my words. She hesitated briefly, then carefully reached up, gently touching my cheek, her fingers lingering gently on my skin. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she leaned upward, closing the distance between us, her eyes never leaving mine. Our lips met softly, tentatively at first, then deepening as mutual warmth and affection flowed freely between us. The kiss felt natural, inevitable, the perfect culmination of everything we had silently felt, yet left unsaid. We remained close afterward, foreheads touching, gently breaths mingling warmly in the quiet island air. Yet as our happiness settled around us, another reality lingered, unavoidable and harsh. Our time here was limited. Eventually, rescue would arrive, returning us to responsibilities, expectations, and realities we'd left behind. Victoria finally broke the comfortable silence, her voice quiet yet thoughtful. "What happens when we go back, Liam?" I exhaled softly, my own concerns mirrored clearly in her eyes. "I don't have all the answers," I admitted honestly. "But I know one thing. I'm not ready to lose you. No matter what happens next, I want to face it together." She nodded slowly, trust shining openly in her eyes. "Together," she echoed gently, accepting the uncertainty ahead. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in vivid shades of orange and purple, we stood quietly side by side, fingers intertwined loosely, our newfound bond strong yet vulnerable to the unknown future awaiting us beyond this island paradise. We both knew challenges lay ahead, difficulties that would test our newfound relationship deeply. Yet despite lingering uncertainties in that quiet moment together, hope burned brightly within us, offering reassurance that maybe, just maybe, what we discovered here would prove stronger than anything awaiting us back in the complicated world we'd temporarily left behind. Despite our newfound happiness, I knew we couldn't stay hidden from reality forever. As comforting as our island sanctuary had become, the world we belonged to would inevitably find us, and we would have to face it eventually. One morning, while Victoria rested peacefully in our shelter, I quietly made my way down to the beach, carrying the reflective panel I had discovered. The metallic surface shone brightly beneath the morning sun, its reflection capable of signaling help from miles away. With mixed feelings, I placed the panel, strategically anchoring it to face the open sea, knowing well that this decision might bring an end to our perfect yet isolated world. Victoria found me shortly after, standing silently by the panel, looking toward the horizon. She approached softly, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder, sensing my internal struggle. "You've decided?" she asked quietly, her voice filled with understanding. I nodded, turning slowly to face her. "We can't run away forever," I said softly, regret evident in my voice. "No matter how much I wish we could." Victoria sighed gently, sadness and acceptance blending in her gaze. "I know you're right, Liam. We have responsibilities, lives waiting for us." I gently reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. "I understand," I reassured her, my voice tender yet determined. "But whatever happens next, we'll face it together." A small, brave smile curved her lips as she squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Together," she echoed, affirming our unspoken promise. Over the following days, we shared every possible moment together, knowing our time on the island was limited. We swam beneath sunlit waters, walked the soft, sandy beaches hand in hand, and spent evenings wrapped in each other's arms, quietly talking, or simply enjoying the comfort of silence. Each moment felt precious, a final gift from this place that had given us both new clarity and profound love. Finally, one bright morning, the distant hum of engines shattered our quiet existence. We both hurried outside, squinting skyward to see a rescue aircraft circling above us, drawn by the flashing reflection of the panel I'd placed. My heart twisted painfully at the sight, relief mixed heavily with anxiety as reality rapidly approached. Within hours, a helicopter landed on the beach, bringing rescuers who quickly attended to us, examining Victoria's healing wounds and providing fresh water and food. They informed us how long we'd been missing. Weeks had passed without any trace. As we prepared to board the helicopter, Victoria hesitated, glancing back wistfully at our shelter, now nothing more than a distant dream. Returning home was surreal. News of our rescue spread quickly, and soon our story, complete with its unconventional romantic undercurrent, became public knowledge. Immediately, we faced intense scrutiny, skepticism, and whispered judgments regarding our noticeable age difference and professional positions. Headlines sensationalized our relationship, tabloids speculated mercilessly, and whispers followed us everywhere we went. Faced with this harsh spotlight, Victoria's demeanor changed dramatically. She reverted quickly to her professional persona, poised distant and carefully detached from the emotional connection we had forged on the island. In public, She kept her distance, responding to media inquiries, coolly repeatedly dismissing rumors of a romantic involvement. Each cold denial felt like a small betrayal, each indifferent glance in my direction cutting deeper than I cared to admit. I felt lost, disoriented, heartbroken by the sudden distance Victoria created between us. Perhaps she regretted everything. Perhaps our island romance had been nothing more than temporary vulnerability easily abandoned once reality returned. Despite my confusion and hurt, I respected her choice, maintaining professional decorum whenever our paths crossed, though that ache within my chest grew steadily more unbearable. After a particularly cold public event, where Victoria once again carefully avoided acknowledging me, I finally accepted defeat. That night, packing the few belongings I had at my small apartment, I prepared to leave the city to start fresh, somewhere new where painful memories couldn't follow. As I stood alone in the dimly lit room, a quiet knock sounded at my door, hesitant yet unmistakably familiar. My heart jolted sharply as I opened it, slowly revealing Victoria standing silently outside, vulnerability and sincerity written clearly across her usually guarded expression. "Victoria," I said softly, surprise and hope warring painfully within me. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes searched mine deeply, hesitation briefly clouding her gaze before determination took over. "Liam," she began quietly, her voice steady yet filled with raw honesty. "I can't pretend anymore. I can't continue living this lie denying what truly makes me happy." Her words caught me off guard, hope blossoming cautiously within me. "I thought you'd decided to move on." I admitted carefully, my voice trembling slightly. She stepped closer, her expression softening profoundly. "That's what I thought I had to do to protect us both. But the island showed me something I can't ignore. Real happiness isn't about appearances or societal expectations. It's about being true to yourself, to your heart." She paused briefly, gathering courage before continuing with a conviction. "My heart belongs with you, Liam. Pretending otherwise has only made me realize just how deeply I need you." Emotion overwhelmed me, hearing her heartfelt confession. I reached out instinctively, pulling her gently into my arms. She leaned into me, immediately, a relief evident in her trembling breath. "You don't have to hide from me, Victoria," I whispered tenderly. "We'll face everything together no matter what anyone else says." She lifted her head slowly, meeting my gaze steadily, sincerity radiating from her eyes. "I promise you, Liam, I won't let anything come between us again. You're the only real happiness I've known in years. I can't lose you." A smile curved my lips softly as I gently cupped her face, brushing my thumb lightly across her cheek. "You won't. I'm here always." Our lips met again, gently reaffirming the connection forged in isolation, tested by reality, yet ultimately proving stronger than societal expectations or professional roles. In that quiet embrace, uncertainty faded slowly, replaced by hope and unwavering determination to protect and nurture the love we discovered against all odds. Standing together beneath the soft glow of city lights filtering through my window, we silently vowed never again to sacrifice genuine happiness for the sake of appearances. Our love, born from unexpected circumstances, deepened through adversity, had become the most authentic part of both our lives, deserving protection and respect, and the courage to face the world openly and honestly. As we held each other tightly, Victoria sighed softly, peace finally settling comfortably within her. She whispered gently, sincerity filling her voice. "The island gave me something I never imagined possible, real love, trust, and someone worth fighting for." I smiled warmly, holding her closer still. "And we'll keep fighting together always." In the end, our journey taught us that true happiness could only flourish when we embraced vulnerability, discarded facades, and bravely chose authenticity over approval. Regardless of future challenges, we would face them side by side forever, guided by the profound truth we had uncovered on our isolated paradise. Genuine love was worth every risk, every judgment, every sacrifice. The gripping tale of Liam and Victoria stranded on a deserted island unveils a profound life lesson. Vulnerability can forge the deepest connections, teaching us to embrace authenticity over societal expectations. Liam, a 24-year-old assistant, and Victoria, his formidable 40-year-old CEO boss, were worlds apart, separated by age, status, and her icy professionalism. Yet a plane crash thrust them into a raw struggle for survival, stripping away titles and facades. As they faced storms, hunger, and Victoria's near-fatal illness, their reliance on each other blossomed into trust and ultimately love. Victoria's confession of loneliness behind her successful veneer and Liam's unwavering care during her fever revealed their shared humanity. Back in the real world, its societal scrutiny and professional boundaries threatened to tear them apart, but Victoria's courageous choice to embrace her heart over appearances solidified their bond. This story stirs a whirlwind of emotions, fear, hope, and the bittersweet ache of defying norms for love. It reminds us that true strength lies in vulnerability, in daring to lean on others and build connections that defy expectations. Life's trials, like their island ordeal, can reveal what truly matters: authentic relationships worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Their journey inspires us to shed our own masks, embrace those who see us for who we are, and prioritize love over judgment. Have you ever found unexpected connection in a moment of vulnerability? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how life's challenges shaped your relationships. If this tale moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more heartfelt stories that remind us to live authentically. Your support keeps these emotional journeys alive on our channel,